If you wake up and don't wanna smile, if it takes just a little while, open your eyes, look at the day. You'll see things in a different way. Then don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, it'll soon be here. It'll be better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. Why not think about the times to come and not about the things that you've done? If your life was bad to you, just think what tomorrow will do. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, it'll soon be here. It'll be better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. Don't you look back. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, it'll soon be here. It'll be better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. And all I want is to see you smile, if it takes just a little while. If you don't believe that it's true, I never meant anything but good for you. And then don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, it will soon be here. It will be here better than before. Yesterday's gone. Ooh. And don't you look back. Ooh, yeah. Don't you look back. Don't you look back. Don't you look back. Don't you look. Ooh. Don't you look. Don't you look, don't you look back.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody, to Unity on Greenville, where we practice a positive path for spiritual living. My name is Sandra Dela Cruz, and I'm your celebration assistant today. So happy to welcome all of you that are here in the sanctuary, as well as those of you that are at home. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So nice to have you here on this very hot summer day in Dallas, but we are in a very cool sanctuary, and I hope those of you at home are also having a nice cool spot with maybe some iced tea or iced coffee. Announcements. I'd like to announce today we have Valerie Hope, who is our board vice president. She will be speaking today, and we are grateful to have Valerie. Thank you so much to Valerie Hope for speaking today. Next week, we will have Reverend Doug Dewar. He will be back, and how wonderful it is to have all of these wonderful speakers who bring a message to us every Sunday. We are very, very grateful. I'd also, you'll notice behind me there are some beautiful flowers. We'd like to thank the bride and groom from yesterday's wedding who donated to us these gorgeous flowers. And we're going to enjoy them today during our service. and I hope those of you at home can also see them. So thank you to the bride and groom yesterday, and we wish them nothing but the best on their lives together. We have wonderful upcoming speakers, and on the e-news you can look at the list. We have wonderful speakers who will be coming up, and Valerie, Reverend Doug, and the last Sunday in July we will have Reverend Veronica Valles. I'd like to share with you 3 ways to give. We are so grateful for any gift that you can give us. It really helps us to continue our good service and our celebration services. And I'd also like you to notice we have a new projector. If you can see the clarity of the slides now, we are very grateful, and it's because of you that we're able to purchase a new projector. What we found is that our old one was so old that we knew that there were no parts available. So we knew that eventually it was going to wear out, and we would not be able to fix it. So we went ahead, and with your generous donations, we're able to purchase a new projector. And I know that those of you in the sanctuary noticed the difference, and probably those of you at home as well. So please, if you're able to give anything, that allows us to do things like that, to keep our church running and have beautiful music, have wonderful speakers. There are 3 ways to give. You can go to dallasunity.org and push the donate button. That's one way to give. In the e-news at the bottom, there is another way to give. And we have a new way to give, which is called text to give. And I know a lot of you have already tried it. I've heard from several people how simple it is to use our text to give. So we are grateful to have these new ways to donate, and we are grateful to you for your donations. If you even would like to write a check, we still do that. We still take checks. For those of you like me who write checks. And those you can mail to Unity on Greenville at 3425 Greenville Avenue, 75206. And you're also welcome to give here at the sanctuary on your way out. Let us say together our offering blessing. With divine love as me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. With gratitude, we commit to using our gifts for good. Today's daily word. Today is Sunday, July 17th, 2022, and our word for today is trust. Our affirmation for today is, I place my trust in God. Few things are a greater comfort than deep and abiding trust in God. When I trust, I move more confidently through life. I feel the wind at my back and am made strong in the face of adversity. In the past, I may have felt disappointed when I misplaced my trust. The things of the world are impermanent. Even people come and go. The truth of God as the one presence and power in the universe, and as my life is everlasting, unchanged and unchanging through all the seasons of life. Even as I grow, evolve, and deepen in spiritual understanding, God is always my source, the inspiration I return to again and again. My freedom to seek and discover lies in the awareness that I can always trust in God. Today's scripture is from Isaiah 26:4. Trust in the Lord forever, for in the Lord God you have an everlasting rock. Will you repeat today's affirmation with me? I place my trust in God. Today's prayer will be given to us by Judy Flemister. And I'd like to also let you know that at home today, Donna Kirby will be our keeper of the flame. Judy, let us prepare for prayer.
Good morning, Unity on Greenville. So good to see you this morning. Let us pray. Sweet Spirit, we take this time to remember you. We close the door on the outside world and we focus within. We allow our breath to guide us into our heart center. We're going to take 3 deep cleansing breaths, and we will inhale trust now and exhale peace now. As we move deeper into our heart space, we realize the oneness of us all. We tune in to the source of our being, the everlasting presence of God. Deeper still we go in silent reflection of the oneness that we are, all in spirit. We pause and we ask, we listen, and we follow Spirit's guidance. We are empowered by the oneness of God. We bless one another as we bless ourselves. We are so grateful that we know the source of our being. Thank you, God. Amen. I will be in the back of the sanctuary following the service if you need additional prayer. Thank you.
Take a moment and ensure that you're seated in a comfortable position. Allow the chair, the floor, the surface you're sitting on to take your weight, to support you. Let's take a moment to continue to lengthen our breath. As we follow this meditation from the Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. Begin by thinking of someone that you love very much, a relative, a friend, perhaps even a pet. Try to see in their face or your mind's eye, or feel their presence. Notice how your heart feels when you think of them. Feel whatever arises. You may feel warmth, tenderness, affection. Stay with these feelings. If not, just stay with the thought of that loved one. Silently, say to yourself the following: May you be free from suffering. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you find peace and joy. Breathe in, and as you breathe out, imagine a warm light coming from the center of your heart, carrying your love to that loved one, bringing them peace, bringing them joy. Rejoice in the thought of your loved one's happiness for a minute or two. Remember when this person was having a difficult time. Notice what it feels like to experience their pain. Does your heart ache? Do you have a feeling of unease in your stomach? Perhaps a desire to help? Simply notice those feelings. Stay with them. Silently offer the following phrases. May you be free from suffering. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you find peace and joy. Imagine that a warm light emerges from the center of your heart and touches that person you have in mind, easing their suffering. Send them a heartfelt wish that they be free from suffering. Lastly, fill your heart with a desire that all be free from suffering. Perhaps even someone with whom you have a difficult relationship. Silently repeat these phrases. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings find peace and joy. Allow your feelings of compassion and concern to fill your heart. Feel the warmth, the tenderness, and the caring. Radiate this feeling of compassion out to the world. And so it is.
Put a little love in your heart. Put a little love in your heart. Just put a little love in your heart. Put a little love in your heart. Think of your fellow man, little hand. Put a little love in your heart. You see, it's getting late. Oh, please don't hesitate. Put a little love in your heart. And the world will be a better place. And the world will be a better place for you and me. Just wait and see. Another day goes by and still the children cry. Put a little love in your heart. Whoa, whoa, whoa. If you want the world to know, we won't let hatred grow. Put a little love in your heart. And the world will be a better place. And the world will be a better place for you and me. Yeah, just wait and see. Just wait and see. Yeah. Take a good look around, and if you're looking down, put a little love in your heart. I hope when you decide, kindness will be your guide. Put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place. And the world will be a better place for you and me. Yeah, just wait and see. Put a little love in your heart. Why don't you just put a little love in your heart? Take a good look around. Put a little love in your heart. Put a little love in your, put a little love in your, put a little love in your, put just a little bit of love in your heart.
Put a little love in our heart. I think we should put a lot of love in our heart. I don't know, why be stingy about it? Good morning, everyone. Wonderful to see you. I know over the years I've had an opportunity to come here and share a message. You've probably heard me as celebration assistant as well. But there are a few things that you probably still don't know about me. Did you know I didn't realize that I was black until I was 14 years old? Don't look at me like I'm strange. I see you, Wes. Well, I mean, obviously I knew my skin color looked like. I just didn't know it mattered until I was 14. Let me explain. I'm originally from the Republic of Panama. Some of you already know that. And the capital city where we were born, when I was born and raised, there are people from a lot of different ethnicities. So color just didn't mean anything where I grew up. And then when I was 9 years old, my dad joined the US Army, so we moved to the US. And we lived on military bases. And military bases are also quite diverse. People from all over the world, people who've traveled to a lot of different places. So there, again, didn't make a big difference, especially when we lived in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii for 4 years. I was there from 5th grade through 8th grade. Loved it. There's so many people from so many different backgrounds in Hawaii. I remember my first crush. Oh my gosh, he was tall, super talented. He played the tenor sax. I played the clarinet. So he sat in the same section. I never spoke to him, but I admired him from afar. It never even struck me as odd that he was Japanese. That was just part of it. And then after we left Hawaii, we moved to Southeast Alabama. Oh. Nothing against Alabama, but it was different than Hawaii, very different. And there, I started in the 9th grade. I remember my very first day of school. We didn't have a high school on the military base where we lived, so we had to go off base in order to go to high school. There were only a couple of busloads of us. First day of school, I was super nervous. I sat next to the first person who I saw an empty seat. It so happened, she was also from Panama. Like, what are the odds? What are the odds? She was a senior in high school, and by the time we got to school, she'd helped me kind of calm down a little bit. I felt like at least I know one person. And then the rest of the day, I was on my own. And the first day of school, trying to find where the lockers are and how to get to my classes. And I'm a very extroverted person, so I need connection. I need to chat with people. But I didn't get much of a chance to do that in class, so I was looking forward to lunch. So go to the lunchroom, and I remember walking in, and I noticed something that was very shocking to me. On one side of the lunchroom sat all white students, and the other side of the lunchroom sat all black students. And I'd never seen that before in real life. I mean, I'd seen it in movies and TV shows from the 60s, right? Civil rights documentaries. But I never grew up that way, so I was kind of scared because I wasn't sure, like, do I have to sit with the black students? What happens if I don't? I don't know anybody here. And luckily, as I was scanning the crowd, I saw Marilyn from the bus, the Panamanian. She's brown. So I slowly made my way towards her, and I'm like, can I sit here? And she, luckily, as a senior, allowed me to sit with her. But those first couple years of high school were really tough. So I wasn't really quite sure where I fit in, especially with my background. I came to find out later that my high school had been integrated in 1969. That high school that I attended was actually the school for white students. Black students went to a high school across town. And that meant that my classmates, their parent and their grandparents had never shared a building. I mean, much less a cafeteria table. But this was not, I went to high school in the 80s. This was in the 60s. And you could still see the remnants of the way people had been raised. I'm not really sure what it's like today. There's a lot more diversity. I went to Alabama a few weeks ago, spent some time there with where my mom lives, which is in the same town. And you can see a distinct difference in how much mixture there is. But I think we do have opportunity to think about the first time we noticed that we were different. Do you guys remember when the first time you noticed that you were different, whether it was your skin color or your ethnicity or your social status or something, how tall you were, how short you were, any of that? Those have a way of impacting how we move in the world. For me, because of my upbringing and my ability to have had some opportunity to travel, I really understood what it felt like to not be included, to not feel connected. And somehow, out of that experience, my goal has always been to connect with people and connect people to one another. I feel like now that's like my sacred act of activism, is connecting people together. And I've had the benefit of living in many different countries. I've traveled and lived with about 400 host families, where often I was the only person of color that they'd ever had in their home, and somehow was able to connect with a lot of different people. And so today I really want to talk about what does it take to connect in ways that changes our hearts and minds and changes another person's heart and mind. I think that's really an important message. As a speaker and as a leadership coach, after George Floyd's murder, I got a few phone calls and emails from people asking if I could come in and do some sort of workshop or some interaction with their staff to support their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And for example, there was one particular organization reached out to me, and they said they'd had a conversation with their entire staff. People were very distraught. There's a lot of trauma. People weren't sure how to deal with all the things that were happening, the protests at the time. There's so much happening. And they established a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. And this committee put together a whole bunch of resources that they thought would be helpful. Everything from books, articles, videos, et cetera, to help educate people on what was actually happening in the country at the time. And now they wanted to bring in a speaker. So I asked, well, how'd it go? How did the resources work? What impact did they have? She wasn't able to tell me. And I said, so, how long has it been since that meeting where people were sharing how much trauma they were experiencing and how distraught they felt? She said it had been about 6 weeks. And in 6 weeks, no one knew, even though the committee had gone above and beyond in putting together a bunch of resources, no one really knew what impact it had. And that happened time and time again, where I noticed that the intent to make a difference, the intent to change, especially the minds of people. But what I saw was missing time and time again was this desire didn't always include a heart-centered path. It was, let's educate, let's give information, let's give resources, but the conversations were missing. And I wondered why. Now, what's funny, my dad was in the military, as I mentioned. He used to play a game as part of their physical fitness regime, play a game called push ball. Anybody familiar with that game, push ball? No. Essentially, push ball is they have this huge ball, is 6 feet in diameter, so taller than me, weighs 50 pounds. And what they did is they would have the groups divide into 2 teams, and they would play in the field the size of a soccer field or football field. The goal was to get this huge ball into the opposing team's goal. Now, you can imagine trying to push a ball that's 6 feet in diameter across a field with a whole bunch of other people trying to push it back. People would get trampled and elbowed and shoved and stepped on trying to get this ball across. And it would only move inches sometimes because there was so much force coming from both sides. So my dad said every once in a while, if they got smart and they had a little moment, they would strategize and get a small group of people to get under the ball and lift it in the air, and they could bounce it over the heads of the opponents, moves it down the field much faster. What if conversations where we feel disconnected from other people kind of feel like that big, heavy ball, where it doesn't quite move as much as we would like, it's uncomfortable, sometimes people get rolled over, stepped on, trampled. How can we find a path of least resistance? How do we lift the ball so that we can bring some joy, bring some connection? Now, I know in one of our unity principles, I saw in the book that Ellen Davenport wrote, it was really interesting. It says, in her words, it says, human beings have a spark of divinity. Within them, the Christ spirit within, their very essence is of God, and therefore, they're also inherently good. We sometimes forget. As I said, my brand of sacred activism is now connecting people. I didn't know that that was activism, but I can see now that it's sometimes very well needed. So there are 3 ways that I'm going to encourage us to find joy in being more connected to others. Specifically to discover that spirit, that spark of divinity in other people. One is to get curious. Another one is to shift our perspective. And then the final one is to establish connection. A few weeks, actually just last Sunday, when I was traveling back from Alabama, I was at Love Field and I took a lift back to my home. I'm always curious about people. I like to ask a lot of questions. And it's like a 15, 20-minute drive from Love Field to my house. The gentleman that picked me up, really tall guy, really big, and I noticed when he was putting my suitcases in the trunk of his car, he only used one hand. And his other hand looked perfectly healthy, but somehow he only used one hand, and he barely moved the other one. So I was curious about, I wonder why he's not using both hands. He didn't ask for my help or anything, so I just kind of stood back and watched. He got all my stuff in. Then we got in the car, and he starts to drive, and I noticed again that he just kind of rested his right hand on the console. And I'm just a curious person, so I was trying to find like a nice, polite way without offending anyone. I'm like, I wonder what's wrong with his hand. Should I ask? Do I say something? Is it a disability? Is he injured? I don't know. I was going crazy, literally. My family knows that I love asking questions. So, but I bit my tongue, so I was like, that's not polite. Maybe 7-year-old Valerie would have gotten away with it, but this age Valerie would not. And so I just, we talked about the weather a little bit. He asked me, where are you traveling from? And I said, I was just in Alabama. He goes, oh, are you a Crimson Tide fan? That's the football team. And I was like, no, well, kind of. That's my alma mater. I went to the University of Alabama, rolled Tide. And he's like, oh, I'm an LSU fan. I'm like, oh, cool, LSU, Louisiana State. And we started chatting about that, which is almost impossible for me to maintain a conversation about football because I don't watch it. I don't care that much about it. But I asked him, I'm like, do you play any sports? Or did you play any sports? And he said, oh, actually, I used to play football in high school until the accident. I was like, oh, accident? What happened? He and 2 of his buddies were in a car accident. The driver walked away unscathed. He, sitting in the passenger seat, was in a coma for 3 months. And his best friend, who was sitting in the back, was killed. In that 20-minute drive from Love Field to my home, he shared the impact of having lost his best friend. He shared the relationship he has with his family. He shared some of the struggles he was having with his body, including the use of his arm, some of the brain damage that he experienced. I was so honored to have been able to hold enough space for him to share that in such a short period of time. And come to find out, there was a study done about why are questions so impactful? How do they connect us? How do we find that spark of divinity through questions? Well, if you think about it, we love people who ask us questions, especially people who seem really genuinely interested in who we are and why we think the way we do, right? Don't you like people to ask you a couple times, to ask you some questions? But here's the key. The key is follow-up questions. Not just like, how are you doing? How's the weather? Is it hot for you? Did you go to vacation? No, we want follow-up questions like, so I see that you straighten your hair. What inspired that, right? What inspired that, Judy? No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to answer right now. Hormones. Now we know. But follow-up questions are really powerful ways for us to connect and really understanding the spark of divinity in other people. And here's the other part of the study they did. It's not just important to ask questions, it's as impactful. We love people who answer questions. So think about how open and honest and genuine someone is, how much they trust us to be able to say the truth about themselves. So a question for you is, how safe are you for people to share their spark? Can people be honest with you? Do you take a moment to ask questions, to find out who people are, why they think the way they are? That's the real joy. The second area I want to mention is finding that spark of divinity is also helpful if once we hear somebody's answer, we have to be willing to kind of let go of our own preconceived notions and shift our perspective. So many of my stories have to do with travel. I spend a lot of time on airplanes, but I was going to Denver on Southwest Airlines. And you all know Southwest Airlines, there are no assigned seats, so first come, first served. I'm in Group C, which is the last group to get on the plane, so you know you're going to get a middle seat if you're in Group C. Sure enough, when I get on the plane, every aisle and row seat was taken. So I found the first middle seat that I thought would be comfortable for me to sit in. And the gentleman that was on the aisle gets up, I slide in, start putting all my stuff under the seat. And there is a woman sitting on the window who was curled up into like this ball with a pillow. And as I was shoving my things under the seat and getting situated, I accidentally brushed up against her. And she flinched as if I'd hit her. And I was so shocked. I thought, oh my gosh, did I hurt her? Did something happen? And she didn't change her position. She just kind of curled even further. And I had all these judgmental thoughts. I'm sorry. I had all these judgmental thoughts about her. I'm like, oh my gosh, like who does she think she is? It wasn't that big a deal. What's wrong with her? is that some sort of prejudice that she has? Like, what? Yes, I went there. I had a moment. And then plane took off, we're on our way, didn't pay her any mind. And at some point in the flight, she signals to want to get out, to go to the restroom. So we all slide out, she goes to the restroom, and when she comes back, she curls back up into her little position. And I notice when she sits down, getting curious, I notice her go, she just sighed. And she sighed again. And then I saw her go like this and wipe her cheek. And as my curiosity got the better of me, I just leaned over and I said, "Hey, are you okay?" And she just nodded, yeah, okay. Then I saw her wipe her cheek again. I asked, "Do you need anything?" And she said, "No," but this time she turned towards me. She said, "I just buried my mom yesterday." Oof. And I expressed my condolences, and we started having this beautiful conversation about family and her experience, having buried her mother, and her relationship with her siblings, and what life would look like today. And she asked about my family, and I'm like, thank God I still have both my parents now, but I think about that now as they get older, what that means for us. And we had such a beautiful conversation. By the end of the flight, we hugged. I don't even know her name. I don't even think we got each other's names. We just had this really beautiful conversation. But imagine, had I not taken the moment to allow my perspective to shift, all those judgmental thoughts that I had about this woman and her reaction to me and why, and I made up this whole story, had I not just taken a moment to activate and get curious, I would have missed that spark of divinity that conversation provided for both of us, which was a very healing moment. Now, last thing is, beyond getting curious and asking questions and also understanding that we have to shift our perspective, now we actually have to establish and nurture some sort of connection with others. Some of you know I host a podcast. I started it about 1.5 years ago, and that was my, again, sacred activist move to connect people. Rachel's been a guest on the podcast before. Thank you, Rachel. I connected her with another musician who was, I don't know why we didn't do like a dueling piano thing. I feel like it would have been appropriate, but we didn't. But it was still a great conversation. She did great. But this podcast, the whole idea is to connect people who don't know each other, to have a meaningful conversation, so that I can model for people what it's like to meet someone and still go deep and still have that moment of sacred divinity. In this one particular episode, I invited 2 women, one black, one white, both gay. And they didn't know each other. I'd worked with both of them in professional environments, but we'd never had a conversation about their sexual orientation. So going into the conversation, I was actually a little intimidated, because I'm like, I don't want to say something ignorant. I don't want to ask an insensitive question. But I thought, this is another opportunity for me to model what it's like to be curious and shift perspective. And so we're having this conversation, and I say, okay, LGBTQIA+. It's a lot of letters. Break it down for me. What do they all mean? Do you guys know what they mean? What's the L stand for? Lesbian. B, LG, sorry, G. Gay. B, bisexual. T, trans. Q, queer. I. See, that's where they got stuck too. Yes? Intersex, yes. And then asexual, right? I know, learning. So, and then the plus is because I guess you can add letters as you go. But so what's so interesting in this podcast episode, when I asked the question, we kind of went through the same thing, and both ladies said, "You know what, Valerie, we're Gen Xers. We weren't born when all those, we've been around a lot longer, and these letters have been added pretty recently." But that wasn't even the fun part. The fun part came after we finished the interview. One of the guests sent me an email saying, "I am so sorry, but I think I may have said or asked something that was really insensitive and dismissive to you, Valerie. I apologize." I was like, oh. And then the other one said, you know, when we were talking about all the acronyms and stuff, I'm so sorry, I think I said the wrong letter or I said the wrong word. I apologize, I should know better. I'm a representative and I'm on podcasts. And I was like, okay. And then I apologized because somehow I told him about having a crush on a Japanese guy, somehow equated to being in the closet. And I said, is not relevant, so I apologize for that. All of us took a turn around the wheel of apologies in that conversation. It was so funny because none of us had actually committed any error. I went back and listened to the episode. There was no supposed dismissive comment. The letter that the woman thought she missed, she actually got right. It was something else that she'd missed. And in the context, it was absolutely appropriate for me to talk about Mark, my Japanese guy from 7th grade. But all of that to say that what established the connection for us wasn't just talking about something. It was also owning our frailty and our humanity in doing so. The mistakes that we made and the ability for us to just own it by saying, I'm so sorry, I think I messed up, was what brought that moment to light. There's a spark of divinity for each of us. Now, I know some of this stuff sounds kind of heavy, obviously, when we're talking about getting curious, shifting our perspective, and establishing a connection. But I found that there's a really fun way to do it. And I want to plant a seed here at Unity on Greenville today, not only for those of you here in the sanctuary, but also those of you watching online. I'm going to plant a small seed by asking us to play a little game. Have you guys, now hang on a second. Have you played the game, Never Have I Ever? Yes, Denise knows, yes. It's a drinking game. We're not going to drink. I have made it Sunday morning friendly for us, so we're going to call it Have I Ever. You may have even seen this online. In just a moment, I'm going to show you a list of things, of experiences on the screen. For every experience that you've had, you will give yourself a point, okay? For every experience that you've had that you see on the screen, you'll give yourself a point. And then I'm going to ask you at the end to tally up the points and let us know how many points you actually got. So it's a version of the game. If you want, later on, I can tell you what, if you want to make it interesting, that I'll tell you the drinking version of it. But we'll do the Sunday morning version. Go ahead and put up on the screen. Okay, here we go. So you give yourself a point for each one of these experiences that you've had. I'll read these out loud in case you can't see them. So if you've broken a bone, lied about your age, gotten a tattoo, fired a gun, accidentally pocket dialed somebody, you snuck out of your house, you maybe practice a different religion than your parents. If you ever lied to get out of doing something for our church, if you've been a vegan or vegetarian, have you participated in a protest, had a near-death experience, got into trouble as a teenager, maybe you've fallen asleep while reading a bedtime story, lived in another country, had your name mispronounced, lost someone during the pandemic. Maybe you act on superstitions. You've raised your kids differently than you were raised. You've raised your kids differently than the way you were raised. Maybe you've ridden a motorcycle. You've asked a child to show you how to use technology. Performed on a stage, met a celebrity, or eaten an exotic food. So any of those experiences, give yourself a point. How many points? Yell them out. 16, 12, 19, 13. I got 13 too. 17. Look at some of your well-lived lives. Interesting. So here's the seed I'm planting. Now you have the opportunity to ask a follow-up question. So I'm just to model this for a second, I'd like for you just to turn to the person next to you or close to you, if you can. I'm not sure, maybe I'm the closest here. And I want you to share, give like a 30-second context of one of these experiences that you've had. And if that's a tattoo, for example, yeah, you know, I got a tattoo when I was 18 and it's in the butterfly because I love butterflies. I don't have a tattoo. I don't like butterflies that much. So I'm just making it up, but I just want you to get a sense of what you can share with your partner. If you are married or if you're sitting with somebody that you know really well, please find something on the list that you have not talked about, okay? So everybody just I'll give you 30 seconds each. First person to share one thing, one experience, give a little context, what it is, how it happened, right? And then after 30 seconds, I'm gonna ask you to switch so your partner can share. Those of you who are on Facebook, jot down the number of experiences, how many points you got, and then give us a line or two about that one experience that is particularly meaningful to you. All right, 30 seconds, go. But I didn't bring him to tears. All right, make sure you switch. Make sure you switch. Thank you, Rachel. I can see. All right, come on back. Come on back. Come on back. So you can already see, because it's hard for me to get your attention again, it was a calculated risk. It was a calculated risk. If you could just take a moment, pause your story, pause your anecdote. It's just a seed plant to continue the conversation after we're done. Perhaps there are other experiences on the list that you want to share with your partner or with others. But you can already see the impact of knowing something different, unique, special, and it didn't take that long. And then getting curious enough to ask that follow-up question. And perhaps we had some sort of perspective about who this individual was and how they think and why they do what they do. But learning something about them and going beyond the surface, now you see, oh, that's really interesting. I would have never thought that about you. But your job is now to continue to nurture that spark. It's one thing to see the spark of divinity, but if we want to really light the flame, we have to do the work. We have to go beyond ourselves to do that. Continue to have these conversations. Continue to reveal something about yourself that people don't know, that people sometimes forget to ask. That usually encourages other people to share too. So in closing for today, I just really, my hope is that if you've noticed that you've been a little tense about certain topics, that you've been avoiding certain conversations, and it doesn't have to do with diversity, equity, or inclusion. It could simply be a family member, it could be a colleague, it could be a situation at work that you just haven't dealt with. How can you activate and get curious about what's happening? What's happening to you? What's happening to the other person? Is there some judgment that you've been holding about somebody without all the information? Maybe it's a story that we made up. Perhaps it's a trigger from an experience we've had in the past. How might you go out and actually intentionally shift your perspective about that situation, about that person? And then also think about how to establish a connection so that you go beyond the surface. You know that the aspen trees, they look like they're separate trees. But if you go below the surface, you notice that they're actually a rhizome. They're all interconnected. They come from the same root system. The only way you would know that is if you go below the surface. Human beings are the same. We might all look different. We all sound different. We were brought up in different eras, but we're all connected at our root. We all have that spark of divinity within each of us. It's our responsibility to share it with other people. In the Book of Joy, the Dalai Lama and Reverend Desmond Tutu share that relationship is the true proving ground for spirituality. Ultimately, joy is not something to learn. It's something to live. Our greatest joy is lived in deep, loving, and generous relationships with others. Let's go out and find the God in one another. Thank you.
In spite of everything that happens in the world, it's still worth living for. The problems that we face are inevitable symptoms of mankind's division. It's a bright, bright, beautiful world. Such a bright, bright, beautiful world. Beautiful world. Beautiful world. So maybe let's focus all our positivity on what we choose to be, instead of buying into society's labels. We're here to turn the tables. Such a bright, bright, beautiful world. We're living in the bright, beautiful world, beautiful world, beautiful world, beautiful world. I keep seeing you as the apple of my eye. Let's spread it far and wide. Gonna meet you in the sky. We'll be sky riders. Let's get high and higher in this bright, beautiful world. It's a bright, bright, beautiful world. Such a bright, bright, beautiful world. Living in a bright, beautiful world. Beautiful world. Yeah, it's such a bright, bright, beautiful world. It's a bright, bright, beautiful world. Beautiful world. Ooh, a beautiful world. Living in a beautiful world.
Thank you, Rachel, for that beautiful song, and thank you, Valerie, for the wonderful message. We are so blessed today. We have a mission statement here at Unity on Greenville. Please repeat this with me. With divine love as our foundation, we live unity spiritual principles. We awaken to truth. We affirm the innate goodness of all and our oneness with creation. We have an affirmation for our new spiritual leader. Please repeat this with me and let's say it with gusto. I know we've been hearing that the last few weeks. Let's say it together. We welcome and affirm with love the perfect spiritual leader who embraces the truth of unity principles. And so it is. If you'd like to connect with us, if you are new to Unity or are visiting us for the first time in our streaming, we would love to hear from you. Whether you are new or not new, we still would love to connect with you. You can go to our website and complete a Connect card and give us and share with us your thoughts. You can also ask for prayer, so we welcome all of your requests for prayer as well as your comments or suggestions. Now let us sing the peace song. If everybody will stand, let's sing the peace song together. Rachel.
Yes, there is peace on earth. I know it begins in me. Yes, there is peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. We got our Creator, united all the way. Now we walk with each other in perfect harmony. Yes, there is peace on earth, for this is the moment now. With every step I take, I make this my joyous vow. I take each moment, live each moment in peace eternally. Yes, there is peace on earth, and I know it begins in me.
And now the prayer of protection together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Thank you.
It's a bright, bright, beautiful world. Such a bright, bright, beautiful world. Beautiful world. It's a bright, bright, beautiful world. Ooh, it's a beautiful world, a beautiful world. Ooh, beautiful world.